Yeah, so as you know, my name is Mitchell. I've lived in Niseko for 5 years now.
Yes.
Before Niseko, I lived in Tokyo. So I went to school in Obidin Daigaku for 1 year, and then I worked in Ginza for 2 years. Then after that, I came to Niseko.
And
I worked in a clothing store.
clothing store.
So hold on. My first job in Japan was a clothing store, but it was a part-time job. So the clothing store was in Yokohama. Do you know Narapoto?
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Airport.
I worked at a Hollister at Lalaport in Yokohama. That was my part-time job when I was at Obidin. But then when I was working in Ginza, I was a English teacher. When I first started college, my university, I didn't know what I want to major in. So when I was in school, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I felt very lost. I didn't have a clear plan. I didn't know what job I wanted to do. I didn't know what I should do. So my first year in university, I took many classes, science, math, history, English. I also took Japanese and music. I really like music. I really like Japanese. And as I took more classes, I realized I like Japanese and my grades were pretty good.
Yeah.
So because I had good grades and I liked it, I decided to major in Japanese. So you asked me, why did I come to Japan? It's because I was studying Japanese. I liked studying Japanese. And if I studied Japanese and never came to Japan, that's a big waste of time. You know what I mean? I feel like if you want to study a language, you need to try living in that country. Otherwise, you only know your country's version of the language. If you only use a textbook, you only know the textbook language. For me, my Japanese was very unnatural. I knew a lot of words. I knew words about economics and business and politics and all these different things, but I couldn't have conversations. So that's why I decided to study abroad. And I came to Obidin Daigaku. But at Obidin, I was very, very depressed. I couldn't really have conversations. Even though I knew a lot of words and I studied Japanese a lot, I feel like I came to Obidin and I couldn't speak very well. I wanted to make jokes. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to be funny, but I feel like the words in my head wouldn't come out. And that was very, very difficult. So that's very normal. And actually, because I had this, it was so difficult for me. I was thinking, I don't think I'm ever going to come to Japan again. I'm going to go home, graduate, and probably find a job in America. So I left Japan and I didn't really like it. But after I went back to America, it felt like life was a little too easy. I feel like living in Japan was difficult, but it was a good challenge. I feel like I learned a lot. I grew up. I became a smarter person. I don't know. It just felt like it was a challenge every day, which is kind of good. So that's why I decided to leave America again and come back to Japan. And now I haven't left Japan since I came. So why did I work in Japan? First, it was because of the language. I was studying Japanese, and if I don't live in Japan, then I thought it was a waste of time. After that, I wanted to live in Japan because it was more challenging and more interesting than living in my home country. And probably for you, maybe you think Japan is boring and normal, but if you go to another country, like if you go to my country, it probably is very different and very challenging for you. So, yeah, that's why. So I started learning Japanese in high school, and my teacher was Japanese. Then in university, almost every professor teaching Japanese was from Japan. We only had one professor who was not from Japan. And for the students, some students knew Japanese, like maybe some students were half Japanese, half American, but basically everyone studying Japanese was not from Japan. A language barrier. So yes, exactly. When I was learning Japanese, I knew a lot of words, I studied a lot, but that's different when talking to natives. So I came to Japan, and there is a very big language barrier for me. I feel like when you study in your own country, you think about the language through your native language. So I was thinking about Japanese in English, but in Japan, I feel like I was thinking about Japanese with Japanese. I feel like leaving Japan and coming back made it a lot easier. So when I was here, I was a little depressed trying to study, and I didn't feel confident speaking. The only real way to fix that was to get better. So I studied, I kept doing my homework and studying kanji. I just tried to focus on getting better and improving. And when I got better, I definitely felt happier in Japan. The way that I got better was I started reading manga, and that was a very big help. I feel like that helped me read a lot of Japanese. And then also I got the part-time job, which was really good for conversation practice. And at the time, I also had a Japanese girlfriend. And I feel like reading books, going to a job, going to school, and having like a very, very close person with me, all of that was like a very, very good environment for me to get better. In middle school, I studied Spanish a little bit, and I also liked Spanish, but in high school, I could choose between German, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and French, and I wanted to learn Japanese. So I stopped learning Spanish. When I was in middle school, my best friend was a Japanese boy who lived in my town. So I went to his house, and have you been to America? In America, there's many different types of people. So many people look like me in America, but many people look like you. Or many people look African, many people look East Asian. There's many different types of Americans. So when I met my Japanese friend, I just thought he was American, even though he looked like Japanese. But I remember I went to his house and we would play video games. And his house was very different. He had different furniture. He had a washlet. He had different food. He had some different things. And that's when I realized, oh, this boy does not come from America. I feel like at school, I never thought about that. When we were playing or talking, I didn't think about that. But in his house and seeing his mom and dad, I could tell, oh, these people are not American. And that was very interesting. So when I had the option to study Japanese in high school, I said, yes, I want to study Japanese because I thought Japan was interesting. Also, many Americans, they like Japan because Japanese video games, Japanese anime, Japanese technology, Japanese cars are very popular in America. 国際交流員 in English, we say Coordinator for International Relations, or CIR. And the reason I wanted to be a CIR is because you remember I was in Ginza as an English teacher, right?
Yes.
And I didn't come to Japan to only speak English. I came to Japan to get better at Japanese. So I wanted a job in a Japanese office. And CIR jobs through the JET program, the pay is very good. The payment is pretty nice. And yeah, it seemed like a good job for me because they need Americans. They need foreign people. So I applied to the JET program. In this position, I got a lot of experience with translation and interpreting. Before this job, I thought interpreting was about saying every word that they said in a new language. So if we have an American person and a Japanese person, if I'm helping them speak, before this job, I thought everything the American person said, I need to take those words and put it in Japanese. Everything the Japanese person says, I need to take that and put it into English. But I realized most of the time, the way people think is very different. So when you are interpreting, you have to listen to everything they say and then take the general meaning, or like think about in general, what are they saying? And then say it in a easy to understand way in Japanese. You don't need to say it everything that they're saying, because sometimes Americans say things that you don't say in Japanese, so you can't translate it. You have to think in Japanese when you listen to the English. So I didn't know that before this job. Also, through this job, I learned about the Japanese office system. So I work at the Niseko town hall. The town hall is a very strict system. You know, there's chocho, fukuchocho, kacho, kakaricho, shushi. Like there's very strict levels, and learning how to interact with every level and how to use keigo, how to speak politely in Japan. I learned that sort of cultural experience being here too. I feel like in general, Japan is an easy place to not be a native speaker, because I feel like in Japan, the group is very important. So when I was in Obinin Daigaku, I was in a a cappella group, like a cappella club. And I feel like I couldn't talk very much, but still people were pretty nice to me. And I couldn't speak very well, but they invited me to do things. And I thought that was very nice. I felt like even if I couldn't be funny and I couldn't be talkative, people still treated me like a member of the group. So, for example, with many groups in America, I feel like your value is based on how good you are. For example, are you nice? Are you funny? Are you smart? Are you able to help other people? Are you able to make a lot of jokes? I feel like that is how you become popular, and that's how you can be like an important member of a group. In America, it's not very good to be quiet, and it's not a good thing to be shy. In Japan, I feel like if you're quiet and you're shy, it's okay. You can still be a part of a group. So for me, as a non-native speaker, it was kind of easy to learn Japanese here because I could still be with people and I didn't need to be super strong like in America. So the same difference is with meetings. You mentioned that with a Japanese meeting, they have one person talking about everything and then asking people for their opinions, right?
Yes.
I feel like that is polite in America too. If you do that, that is a polite thing. But it's more normal for an American meeting. If you want to say something, you need to say it. Like if you want to say something, you need to say, so I have a comment. Can I talk for a second? You can ask and then speak. You shouldn't wait for someone to give you permission. You can't wait for the host to ask you if you want to say something. Because they think in this meeting, if someone wants to say something, they will say it. So I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to ask them too many times because it's just a different way of thinking. I do feel like in Japan, there's a 気を使うっていう言葉？気を使う。
Yes. 気を使う。
気を使う。英語で何て言うんですか？ How do you say 気を使う in English? Because in Japan, when I think about 気を使う, maybe you're at an izakaya with your senpai and you need to take care of your senpai, or you're with someone like a kakaricho or your joshi and you need to do things that you don't want to do, right? But it's your responsibility to take care of them. And 気を使ってやらないといけないことがあるでしょ?
Yes.
So in America, I feel like that idea doesn't really exist. We have like 気を使う, the meaning, you could say that in English as like being considerate or being friendly, but it's a bit different. So Americans don't have that same sense about 相手に対してやらないといけないことがある. I feel like we don't really have that as much. There's a bit more freedom. Not completely free, but they do think about group relations in a different way. I've met some Japanese people who lived in a foreign country, and I feel like if you go to another country and you meet more people and you know more cultures, it's easier to have an open mind. So before I came to Japan, I think probably I also had an open mind, but now I have an open mind and I know more about Japanese culture, so it's easier for me to understand people here. Because if you don't have the knowledge about that culture, it's easy to have miscommunications or misunderstandings. But yeah, I feel like now when I speak with Japanese students or Japanese people, I mean, I'm not native, I make many mistakes, but my understanding of Japan is much better than before. So right now I'm 28, and when I was 20, I was at Obidin, and like I told you, I went to Obidin to learn Japanese, and I felt very depressed, so I thought Japan was too difficult. So when I was 20, I was very confused. I was thinking, man, I came here to learn Japanese. I don't think I'm going to come back to Japan. I don't know what my plan is. So only after coming to Japan and going back to America when I was 21, I realized I want to work in Japan. So that was the goal. And then for how to go for that goal, I was applying to some jobs, but in the end, I got my job with English teaching because Japan needs a lot of English teachers. So that was the easiest way to meet my goal of living in Japan. applying for an English teaching job. After I came to Japan, I could do a job I really wanted to do, which was using Japanese, working as a CIR. So my goal was to go to Japan. I got English teaching, which I didn't want to do, but it gave me a visa. So after I was here, I did that job for a few years, and then I got the job I actually wanted to do, which is this one. So that's kind of like my dream and my path. 100%.
100%. Yes.
I mean, for me, basically, I did the goal. Well, after graduating, I wanted to speak Japanese in Japan, so that dream was not. That dream didn't happen. I had to get the English teaching job, and then after that, I got this job. So, in the end, my dream was okay, but it just took some time. Now, my dream is to stay in Japan and learn more skills related to technology. So, big data, data analysis, computer programming, learn about information technology, stay in Japan, get better at those skills, also speak Japanese and English, and make more money in the future. So those are my goals now. And I don't know if I can make more money, but that would be great. So right now, my biggest concern is having a good career. So I want to have money in the future, and because of that, I might need to move back to America because the payment in America seems to be higher than Japan. But there's many differences. Japan has better medical system. Japan has a bit more different experiences than I can get in America. But just at salary and money, it looks like America has higher payment. So, maybe I would move to America for that. Also, my wife is Chinese. Mei-san is my wife. So, me and Mei are married, and we are planning our future together. My goal is to be able to work in many countries. For example, if my skill is in tech and IT, then I could live in China and maybe have the same job. I could work for a Japanese company from America. Because me and her are both international residents, I want to be able to live in many different places but keep my job. So that's why I really want to learn something in tech. But I'm not good at tech. I'm studying a lot and trying to get better because I feel like this is a good payment and it gives me freedom to live in a different country, which is really important for me and my wife. Like for me, how do I differentiate myself from others?
For you.
So, I think when you are in university, it's harder to differentiate yourself because most people in university don't have much experience. So for me, I remember when I was in university, it was very stressful looking for a job. I didn't really know how to make myself sound good on a resume. After you work for a few jobs, you know what you're good at, what are your skills, how you're better than other people. You have more things to talk about. So right now, I think you're probably at the most difficult part. So if you are going to be writing resumes and applications, you should talk about what you're good at, what skills you have. If you have any special experiences, then you can talk about that. For example, with me, I talked about my study abroad, my time in Japan. I also talked about, so when I was in a cappella, I tried to make events. I did like a karaoke taikai. I also did like some other like event planning stuff. And I did that for experience. I wanted to show people that I could plan things and make it happen. So I suggest not only studying, but also trying to get experiences. Experience could be with like a part-time job. It could be with a volunteer. It could be with sakuru, like a club. Any sort of thing like studying plus something else. This something else is a good experience when you're applying for jobs. Do you belong to a club, or do you have any other activities besides school? You want something that shows, you know, not just studying, you also like tried to do more things. You wanted to get more experience. So if you're getting that sort of extra experience, then that's a very good thing. That will help your applications. I don't know what everyone is studying, but what I tell you about getting experience in school is good advice for every university student. Trying to, grades and schoolwork is important, but when you are applying for jobs, it's really helpful if you have other experiences. A part-time job, activities, internship, volunteer, something like that will give you more experiences that you can use with making applications. Also, if anyone is studying a language, I really, really recommend studying abroad if possible. If you can, go to the country. Right now it's very difficult because of Corona, but if you can travel to another country to learn that language, then that'll be very, very good for your speaking